Hello, and welcome to the Reach or Miss Show, the podcast for the customer-focused entrepreneur, where Hayut Yogev speaks with entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs about reaching or missing the critical point of approaching the right customer with the right message at the right time and place. The point where business success starts. And here is your host, Hayut Yogev.
Reach or Miss, Episode 44. Carla Johnson, a world-renowned storyteller, an entertaining speaker, and a prolific author of 7 books, Carla Johnson is the Chief Experience Officer for Type A Communications. Her last book, Experiences: The 7th Era of Marketing, sets the benchmark for a powerful new way for marketing to create value for businesses. Named one of the top 50 women in marketing, one of the top 25 women in digital marketing, and one of the top 10 influencers in marketing technology worldwide, Carla challenges conventional thinking. Carla Johnson, what a pleasure to have you here. Hi.
Hi, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's so great, and I've been waiting for this interview. And I wanted to ask you, I just shared with our listeners what you've done until today, and I would like you to share with us what are you doing and most passionate about today, and where are you heading?
You know what I'm really digging into that I'm so excited about, and I've been focusing on this about the last 18 months, is the idea of innovation outside of product for a company. So we know a lot of companies who tout themselves as being innovators. They focus on having the smartest people to design the products and PhDs and design thinking and things like that. But what we see is that employees who work for a company who are outside of that core innovation group start to feel like they're not part of it. And they either feel that they aren't smart enough or it's not their job. So then it's the people who are outside of these innovation groups who feel like they can't contribute to innovation because either they aren't smart enough because they don't have a PhD or that it's their job. So I'm looking at how to help anybody in any organization become the spark for innovation, and that they can bring ideas that follow a specific framework for innovation that helps them understand what innovation looks like, what a great idea looks like, how to take something that they experience in the real world and bring it into their own brand in a way that's really relevant and contributes to the business objective.
Wow, it's so unique. How did you come to this position, to this job?
You know, it's been interesting. So my background is that I started in university as an engineering major, but I ended up as a history major.
Oh.
And along the way, I worked for architects, and it was that nice blend of the technical side blended with the storytelling side that really brought me into marketing and being able to tell the story of something that's very technical from a way that is inviting to an audience. And so what I learned in working from architects is the idea of understanding what emotion you want to evoke from your audience. Like, what do you want them to feel when they interact with your brand or your product or, any kind of an experience, and then reverse engineer that into what it is that you actually create. So when I looked at that, it's led me to the work that I do. And the last book that I wrote was called Experiences: The 7th Era of Marketing, and looking at that focus on experience. And I would have many people come to me and say, this all sounds wonderful and great, but I'm not quite sure how to come up with great ideas. And so that's when I realized that there's a need for a process to make creativity and innovation feel familiar and take some of the risk out of it and give people confidence around bringing new ideas to the table for companies, regardless of what their role is.
It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It sounds fantastic. And what kind of companies are you working with?
I primarily work with business-to-business companies like Motorola Solutions or Emerson or Dell. And what I do is I help them understand what's that idea that's unique and different to them. How do we tell that story so that we can continually trigger that anticipation so people get excited to interact with their brand.
Wow. And where are you heading? What do you see in front of you? Where should it go?
I think that's the fun part, is that I don't have a specific thing that I want this to look like, but just being open to opportunities. And I think most of all, the people who come into my path that this idea resonates with. And I think that's where it makes the idea of innovation and creativity so much bigger than just marketing. And I'm excited to see where it goes myself.
It sounds so great because I just talked about it a few interviews ago that today people are very creative and they are designing new roles and new positions and new things that they can help with according to their own talented, according to their own characters, what they are really good at. And sounds classic like that.
It is. And I think there's many times when employees have passions that they can bring in from their everyday life. Maybe they like to cook or travel or ride bikes. And when they have that opportunity to blend those passions with the work that they do, that's when companies really start to see a lot of exponential outcome from what they're bringing to the table. Bigger revenues, more attention, more attraction, different kind of customers that they never could have imagined start knocking on their door.
You talked about some of the big companies as more technology perhaps oriented. And who do you see? Who do you consider as your customers? How did you figure out or decided that these are the customers that you are going to focus on?
What I did for me that was really helpful is I looked at, when I started my company in 2001, is that I looked what were the situations that I found myself perpetually in my work that made me happy and made me felt like I was contributing the most, was the most helpful, and made me feel like I was contributing in a way that was unique to me. So I looked at that, and that helped me see some patterns going forward as I started my own company to understand who I would target as a customer. And now I still see that it's generally a vice president or above, or a business owner if it's in a startup or a smaller company. I want someone who's looking for a way to be unique, differentiate themselves, and stand out quickly in a crowd in ways that are different from what traditional companies do.
When you say someone, you talk about the person who is in charge of it within the organization, or also the organization itself?
It could be within, it could be the organization itself. So I find, particularly as I talk about how does a company begin to focus on customer experience and trigger anticipation, that resonates much more in addition to marketing. It resonates to the executives, because what they see is that when you deliver an experience that differentiates you, that makes your sales process more efficient. It makes everything within your organization more efficient. So that means you're able to realize greater revenue, greater margin, and it makes people look at the business and how they conduct it from a different perspective and in a way that your competitors aren't able to copy.
Wow. I would like you to tell us about your concept or beliefs on the way an entrepreneurial business or a startup should approach its customers, and give our listeners your best advice for their customers' approach and focus.
I think particularly in the world that we're in today, where just like you and I are doing now, you can talk to anybody around the world in an instant, and we have so much access to so much information and so many people all the time that we realize how much people are demanding our attention. And I see this a fair amount with companies that are young in their journey or startups who want to go out and really bang the drums and do a lot to say, here I am, look at me, to get attention of their potential customers, like a little bit like a child throwing a tantrum. But what I see really makes a difference is instead of banging the drum and saying, look at me, is to say, what can I do to help my customers? Like where are there information gaps that I can fill? And then being committed and dedicated to filling those information gaps. Because in the world that we live in, people go online to look for answers first. And the truth is that if you as a company aren't answering your customers' questions, somebody else is, and it's probably your competitor. And they may not even be doing a good job of it. So that's the best way that I see to be able to start along that line and get that attention for a young company.
It's so amazing because everyone said a bit different, but the advice that all the successful entrepreneurs and opinion leaders are bringing is about focusing on the customers. This is what the podcast is all about, but I agree with you. This is the thing that startups and entrepreneurs usually miss. I know that you've got a lot of successes and we'll get to that in a minute, but I would like to ask you, what is your biggest, most critical failure with customers, the one that affected your entrepreneurial journey the most? Can you share this with us?
Yes, and actually, it's really embarrassing to have to admit it because it's something that I am adamant about talking to my clients about, and that's to continually maintain that relationship, not just with your customers and prospects, but with your audience, because as we know, it's whoever is top of mind is often the person a potential customer or customer will turn to when they need you in that critical moment. And oftentimes we think, well, last time I talked to them, they don't have anything on the horizon. I'm going to go to where the grass looks greener. But we can't always just pursue what looks like is going to be the next sale, because what happens is that's the way that you build trust and you ingrain your reputation, is that customers know that you will always be there regardless. And that ability to maintain that relationship over a long period of time is so important. And especially when we're small companies, maybe solopreneurs, we think we don't have time to do these things. But that's where technology comes in and helps us be where we can't always be ourselves physically or, by voice or email or something like that.
And where do you see the failure? Because you did talk about how important it is, but do you have a story of a failure there?
I think the failure that is embarrassing is when I had worked with a customer for many years and just kind of lost contact with them and then found out that they hired one of my biggest competitors, and it was purely because they maintained the relationship and I didn't.
Oh, I love this story because it will remind all of us to do that. And you're right, of course, I miss that a lot of times too. Now I would like you to tell us about your biggest success due to the right customer approach. Tell us the story of your greatest, most significant success as a result of the right customer focus or something that you did right with the customer.
I think that goes back to that focus on education of my industry, and not just looking at marketers, but looking at business owners and people who are responsible for making the business vision or business objectives successful. And that's when I turned the corner and I looked at how could I continually focus on educating people in the world in which I live, and realizing that there's a lot I know that I take for granted. And that was when I first started blogging, and that's been about 5 years ago. And when I started to blog, it was slow and awful. I'm just going to admit it. And it's getting into that discipline of breaking down a lot that you want to deliver to people into small pieces. Because otherwise what we do is we try to teach people, but we try to teach them so much all at once that we're not able to break it apart and give it to them in ways that are helpful. And in doing that, I was able to start creating some, I call them ultimate guides, to teach people how to do things. And it's those blog posts and those ultimate guides and the different conversations that I've had with people. That was the foundation for the last book that I wrote. And it's also quickly becoming the foundation for the next one I hope to write.
Oh, can you tell us about the last book?
Well, the last book was called Experiences, the Seventh Era of Marketing. And it's looking at how we can deliver value to people that's outside of the products or services that we sell. So if we look at a company like Nike, they have a fitness app that you can use, and that delivers value to people, whether you ever buy their shoes or their workout clothes or whatever that might be. We saw Kraft do this with the Food and Recipes magazine that they publish, and it's adding so much value that it's able to generate revenue. So looking at what is it that companies can deliver that adds value that we don't often think about in addition or sit shoulder to the products and services that we sell.
Wow. And can you make some spoiler and tell us what the next book is going to be about, or it is a secret?
Yeah, well, for me, I'm really digging into this idea of innovation and how do we make innovation become something that feels less risky or more familiar, and looking at what the framework is that the most successful companies in the world use to become what I call perpetually innovative. It's the companies like an Apple or an Amazon. The ones who get us excited, they're able to trigger that anticipation because they're perpetually innovating how they approach business, how they approach customer experience or customer service, or just, how they're always adding delight and we can't wait to see what's around the corner for them.
And now, can you recommend the best and most effective technological or digital tool that's related to customer-focused marketing or sales? And there are so many tools out there. I'm not looking for another one to add to the list, but I'm looking for those that successful people and successful entrepreneurs are using and really make some difference for them.
I think my favorite tool is LinkedIn because I think it gives you so many opportunities to do so many things that entrepreneurs don't always think about. So I see some companies start out and they post to promote their product or an event they're going to be at or something like that. But I find LinkedIn to be an amazing way to ask people questions and test ideas and get feedback on how to approach a customer situation before you ever get into that situation. So I use it to ask questions about, if innovation is so important, then why are companies so terrible at it? And I looked at the response and engagement, and it's tens of thousands of people that this reaches through the network of people who've interacted with it or shared it or commented on it or liked it. So I think it's a much better testing ground for ideas and for asking questions when a lot of people look at it just as in, how can I build connections so I have somebody to sell to?
Wow. And is there any service provider, any person? It can be like a mentor, consultant, advertiser. It can also be a book that had a major impact of your customer success and can help other entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, I think my favorite book it's called The Go Giver. And it's a business lesson book, but it's written in the form of a story. And it brings home how the more you give to other people, the more actually comes back to you. Because when you give without expectation of return, one is that you build a really, really deep amount of trust with people. And the foundation for every successful relationship is trust. And people like to share things that they've gotten that have been helpful. And so that's a way to build your awareness. That's how people know who you are. And when you do things that people know about and you build trust with people, they like you. And the key to every successful business, every customer will do business with somebody that they know, like, and trust. And for me, the way to do that is to follow the advice in the story of the Go Giver. I found it's a very short book and very easy to read, but I found the simplicity of it to be incredibly powerful.
It sounds great, and we will put the link to the book in the show notes of this interview so anyone that wants can find it and read it as well. I'm going to read it. It sounds great.
Excellent.
First of all, I want to ask you, do you remember when was the point you stopped chasing after customers and started to attract them?
I think for me, it was with my blog, and it was when I quit writing about things that I thought I should write about in order to get people to find me. And I started to write about things that I felt very strongly were important for business people to know in order to become successful. And I noticed that when I made that switch, the engagement in my blog went up, the engagement in my social interactions went up, and I started to see people reference me as a valuable resource.
Almost the last question is, there are many things that contribute to our success and affect success, but I want to ask you, what is the most important factor that affected your success? What is your key success factor?
Oh, I go back to relationships because for me, it's the strength of those relationships and maintaining them. It's not just a way for people to remember me, but it's a reminder for me to know what's most important to people and to remember that whatever we do as a business or an entrepreneur or whatever drives us in the roles that we have, at the end of the day, it's about the people who we serve and the difference that we make in their lives. And so for me, relationships matter deeply to me. And it's just a reminder of how important it is to continually invest in relationships. And it's really hard sometimes for startups and entrepreneurs because we think we don't have time. There's always something else that's more important. But even carving out a half an hour once a week to have a call with somebody or to catch up with somebody, it's really important to do that.
Thanks for that. The last question is our mountain question. As I always say, I think that getting to the place where we manage to get into the minds of our customers, and it's always through focusing in them and what they need, but I always talk about taking ownership of a new market category or a place in the mind of the customer. Always remind me like climbing mountains in order to get there. I want to ask you, do you have any mountain, physical mountain, that you ever climbed or thought of climbing or wish to climb? Do you have any relationships with mountains in your history?
It's such a beautiful question because I live in Colorado, which is a state which is known for its mountains. And we have 54 mountains that people seek to climb and check off their list because they're particularly high. And I remember the first time climbing one that high and how early I had to get up in the morning. And it took me back to a memory I had when I was in Ecuador traveling with my husband. And we went with a group of Europeans who were going to hike Mount Cotopaxi and to hike with them to base camp and watch them prepare. And then to see that they would start to begin their summit at 2 a.m., in the middle of the night. And it was such an amazing experience and also a beautiful lesson in that much of the work that we do in climbing these mountains often happens way before people think it does. It's us lonely in the dark, and it's us who have to be prepared to, be committed to it and dedicate time to do it. And you have to do that before you get to the summit and you have the sun shining down on you. And then you go down that mountain and you think about what that next summit is that you do. But I love that metaphor of mountains because I think it is so true.
Yeah, I must say that now with your story, I even love it more.
Yeah.
Because the part of the, preparing and really looking to do it right, it's really beautiful thing to add to this story. Carla, I want just to thank you so much. I really enjoyed this interview. It's inspiring. You're inspiring. And I would like to thank you for coming here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you. And we'll have at the show notes all the links to connect with you. But I want to ask you, before we say goodbye, what is the best way to get in touch with you and to connect with you?
Like I said, I absolutely love LinkedIn. So I encourage anyone to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm also very active on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is just at Carla Johnson. And then there's always my website, typeacommunications.com.
That's great. And I thank you again. And I would like to say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye. Rich or Miss? Episode 44. Carla Johnson, a world-renowned storyteller, an entertaining speaker, and a prolific author of 7 books, Carla Johnson is the Chief Experience Officer for Type A Communications. Her last book, Experiences: The Seventh Era of Marketing, sets the benchmark for a powerful new way for marketing to create value for businesses. Named one of the top 50 women in marketing, one of the top 25 women in digital marketing, and one of the top 10 influencers in marketing technology worldwide, Carla challenges conventional thinking. And for you, our listeners, until the next time, it all goes down to this. You either reach or miss. Keep reaching your goals and vision. Bye!
Thank you for listening to the Reach or Miss Show, the podcast for the customer-focused entrepreneur. You can find all the information, links, and resources that was mentioned at the show in our website, reachormiss.com. See you next week.